Blog Talk Radio.
This is the Light of Truth radio broadcast with Michael Boldea.
Welcome to the program, and thank you for joining us. This is the Light of Truth radio broadcast. I am your host, Michael Boldea, and I'm glad to have you on board. Thank you for joining us. Although this is not a live broadcast, it is close enough to live where it could pass for live. We're recording it the same day, but we are expecting some weather here in good old Wisconsin. It's supposed to start to snow, then start to sleet, then start to snow again. And if I can help it, I'd like to be closer to home just in case it's worse than they say. You know, sometimes, very rarely, actually, things turn out better than some people expect. Most of the time, however, it's worse than people expect. There's a lot that I want to get to today. I fought my instinct to bum you out right before the holidays, right before Christmas. But after all the things that I've been perusing of late, I have no choice but to sort of bum you out maybe just a little bit. Because there are things going on, there are powers joining forces that don't have your best interest at heart, that don't want to live and let live. Their desire is very apparent, their desire is very clear, and if the church, if the household of faith continues to bury its head in the sand, our children have no future. That's the worst of it. It's right now, if you're a father, if you're a mother, if you're a grandparent, that should motivate you to action more than anything else. If the church continues to be silent, our children have no future. We are being propagandized even by those that we deem to be on our side. The first thing I want to get into is something that should rub you the wrong way because it did me. The Pope's charity actually helped to finance the Elton John biopic, which among its many distinctions has the distinction of having the most sexually explicit homosexual interaction that has been on any major screen. So let that sink in just for a smidge. The Pope's charity helped finance the Elton John biopic, which in its runtime has one of the most explicit homosexual scenes captured on camera. I know, isn't the Catholic Church supposed to be on our side? I think regular Catholics are. They're the sort of people that go and protest abortion clinics. They're the sort of people that go give soup out to the homeless. But when it comes to the Vatican, when it comes to the higher echelons of corrupt and pedophilic old men, it would seem not. They are not on your side. They're not on the side of right. They're not on the side of truth. They are financing things that propagandize young people into following a lifestyle that is destructive and antithetical to happiness. So let's get into this. This is fresh. I actually saw it a couple minutes before last week's program, but I didn't have time to get into it. Now that I've allowed it to sort of fester is the best way I can put it, we're going to have some things to say about it. Because once again, rather than invest in family-friendly, in Christian-themed movies, they're investing in Elton John biopics that have explicit homosexual interaction. Guys like Kevin Sorbo, of all people. I don't know if you know who that is. He played Hercules on TV. He's making family-friendly movies, shoestring budgets, financing it himself. And here you have one of the most prosperous, let's say, religions on the face of the earth, financing homosexually themed movies. Rome, December 6, 2019. The biographical musical film based on the life of Sir Elton John, the first movie by a major film studio to include a male homosexual sex scene, was partly financed by the Vatican, Italian media are reporting. So, the Vatican, those who continue to insist that Il Papi is the mouthpiece of God himself, that when God has something to say to mankind, he will speak it to Il Papi, and Il Papi will speak it to us. They partly financed the first movie by a major film studio to include a male homosexual sex scene. Now, I don't mean to be a curmudgeon, but if you're claiming to be the mouthpiece of God on earth, if, as the Catholic Church claims, they are the church upon the rock which Jesus spoke of, ought they not to have enough, I don't know, reason, logic, morality even, not to throw money into a movie that is the first of its kind to include a homosexual sex scene? Yes, I'm going to continue to call it exactly that. I'm going to continue to say the Vatican, the Catholic Church, financed a major movie, which was the first movie by a major film studio to include a male homosexual scene. Maybe, they don't care, but maybe they'll be shamed into making better choices next time. According to Corriere della Sera, recent inquiries into Vatican finances have revealed that 1 million euros in the Catholic faithful's offerings to Peter's Pence, a Vatican fund used for the many different needs of the universal church and for the relief of those most in need. So, again, let us pause, shall we? Let's say you're an average Catholic, middle-aged to twilight years, shakily throwing in a couple euros into a bucket for Peter's Pence, because you've been told by none other than Il Papi himself that money that you're throwing into that bucket will go to fund the many different needs of the universal church and the relief of those most in need. You do this every week. Every time you come to, do the cross sign in church and get some crackers and wine, you throw a couple of euros in there because you want to help. You want to give relief to those most in need. It is, after all, the Peter's Pence charity. It has been blessed by Il Papi himself. How could it not go to a good cause? How could men not be lifted up from poverty? How could relief not be brought to those most in need? Instead of bringing relief to those most in need, instead of funding the many different needs of the universal church, the Peter's Pence charity invests invested €1 million in cold hard cash in Rocket Man, the first major film studio and the first major film to include a male homosexual sex scene. Peter's Pence, a Catholic charity, blessed by Il Pape himself, donated €1 million to the first major film of a studio that included a homosexual sex scene. It's not like family-friendly fare isn't being made. It's not like they couldn't invest in some family-friendly movies. They chose to invest in the first movie by a major film studio to include a major male homosexual scene, with an additional €3 million going to the most recent Men in Black. But yes, Catholics, continue to give to Peter's Pence. Sacrifice of thy goods, because they shall go for the relief of those most in need, such as investing in Rocket Man, the first movie by a major film studio to include a male homosexual sex scene, and of course the other family-friendly fare, Men in Black 3, or 4 or 5 or whichever it is, which talks about space aliens and whatnot. The revelations emerged out of investigations by Holy See prosecutors into investments in Malta involving capital held by the Vatican Secretary of State. At the center of the investigation is Centurion Global Fund, an investment firm based in the Maltese capital of Valletta. Vatican money accounts for 2/3 of the capital entrusted to Centurion, making the Catholic Church its largest investor. Yet these funds went to a series of either speculative, I like that word, speculative, or morally problematic ventures, which reportedly led to 4.6% loss in 2018, which amounts to about €2 million. So not only is the Catholic Church investing in perversion, not only are they making investments attempting to normalize homosexuality, they're losing money at it and still doing it. They lost 4.6% of their investment by investing in speculative or morally problematic ventures. Now, morally problematic, that's a wide range of things. But I'm thinking, maybe number one with a bullet is the first film by a major motion picture to include a male homosexual sex scene. What you think about that? Problematic, huh? Morally problematic. So not only are they financing the devil, they're losing money doing it. But yes, Peter's Pence was, approved by Il Pape himself. Through a €6 million investment by Centurion Global Fund, the Secretariat of State became a partner to 42-year-old businessman Lapo Elkan's eyewear and lifestyle products company, Italia Independent. Elkan is the grandson of Gianni Agnelli, former CEO and controlling shareholder of Fiat Automobiles. Another €10 million deal went through on the September 30th with Enrico Preziosi, games industrialist and chairman of Genoa, and over 4 million euro went to finance production of films such Men in Black and the biography of Elton John, Rocket Man, which includes the first homosexual male sex scene by a major studio, the Italian reported, citing several other examples. These are just some of the many investments made using the offerings of the faithful to Peter's pence. But there are others, and the situation is now being examined by the papal judiciary, the article said. The papal judiciary investigating this situation is like appointing 3 wolves to find out who ate the sheep. We know who ate the sheep. It was a wolf. We know who funded these things. 'Twas the Catholic Church, taking the money of the faithful, given to Peter's pence, for the relief of the most in need, and making Rocket Man, which tells the story of British musician Reginald Dwight's rise to fame as Elton John and downward spiral into debauchery through drugs, alcohol, and last but definitely not least, homosexuality. This is what gets the Catholic Church's stamp of approval. This is what the Catholic Church chooses to finance with the money of the faithful. 2 months before its release, the Daily Mail reported that Paramount Picture Studios were pressuring its directors to cut the homosexual sex scene, but to no avail. No, you got to leave it in there. It was financed by the Catholic Church. They got to get their €1 million worth. Leave it in, I say. The film premiered at Cannes Film Festival and was released to British American theaters in May of 2019. It grossed $195 million worldwide against the $40 million budget. But the film was censored in several countries. In Russia, where the film was released last June, 5 minutes were removed from the final cut, and the company responsible for distribution in the country removed all scenes involving homosexuality and drugs. The cuts were criticized by Elton John and Paramount, and likely by the Catholic Church too. But see, even the people that we were told that we must despise, even people that politically are our nemesis and our enemies, people we consider godless, even they retain enough of a moral compass to say, this isn't right. Because I guarantee you, a guy like Vladimir Putin is not some austere religious guy that goes up into the hills and fasts and prays. But there is this innate sense of moral, of right and wrong that God sort of planted in the heart of every individual. And it comes to the surface if we allow it. The only time it doesn't is when we kill it, when we sear it. So, the Russians removed 5 minutes from the final cut of the film, and the company responsible for distribution in the country removed all the scenes involving homosexuality and drugs. On the other side of the spectrum, the Catholic Church, via Peter's pence, their charity, financed the first movie by a major theater to include male homosexual acts. It was also censored in Malaysia. Safaruddin Muhammad Ali, director of Malaysia's Film Censorship Board's film unit, said, "We do not allow any scenes that promote the LGBTQ in films that are for public viewing." Adding, "Although it is about the real life of Elton John, it is not for him to allow the public to see whatever he does or whatever activities he indulges in. That is not our culture." But apparently, it is the culture of the Catholic Church. It is the Catholic of Il Papi himself and the Catholic Church via Peter Spence to finance movies praising homosexuality, praising a lifestyle that leads to death. Rocket Man was banned in Samoa, a conservative Christian nation. Principal censor Liatawa Nyapu explained, "It's a good story in that it's about an individual trying to move on with life. He, meaning Elton John, went through a difficult family life and managed to move on and become very successful. But there are acts that are not good for public viewing and against the law. Fear not, the Catholic Church not only approves, they also finance such things." According to Corriere, Centurion Global Fund's fund manager is an Italian resident in Switzerland, Enrico Crasso. The 71-year-old former banker at Credit Suisse and owner of Lugano of Sogano Holdings has managed the Vatican coffers for years and apparently losing money at it. For this, he has received numerous formal letters of thanks from the Secretariat of State and has been awarded a gold medal of merit by whom? By Il Papi himself, not to mention millions of euros in commissions. For some months now, inside the Vatican walls, his reputation has begun to show signs of tarnishing. Do tell. But in Malta, he is still the one who decides where to invest the Pope's money. It is not the Pope's money. It is the money of the faithful that they've entrusted to the Pope to do good with, not to finance movies depicting male homosexuality. Just a thought. What's behind these risky and risque investments? The Holy See Press Office responded in a statement saying, "Investigations are in progress and lines of inquiry which may help clarify the position of the Holy See with respect to the aforementioned funds and many others are currently being examined by the Vatican judiciary in collaboration with the competent authorities." News of the Vatican's investment in Rocket Man comes just 2 months after a raid of the Vatican Secretariat of State carried out by now former Vatican police commander Domenico Gianni on the orders of Vatican prosecutors. The National Catholic Register reported in October that the raid was aimed primarily at Cardinal Angelo Becciu, former number 2 in the Secretariat of State, and previous employees of the Dicastery. As sostituto, Cardinal Becciu was instrumental in ending the first external audit of the Vatican by the auditing giant Pricewaterhouse in 2016, agreed upon by Cardinal George Pell and the Council for the Economy. So you see that within the Catholic Church, there is strife. There are still honest clergy that want an audit of the finances, that want to bring these things to the surface, that want to be above board. Then there are people who simply don't. who don't want their faithful to find out that homosexually themed movies are being made with their money. L'Espresso reported that the raid focused on misuse of Peter's pence in a dubious London property transaction, Edward Penton said at the time. The Financial Times later revealed that 200 million in Swiss bank accounts controlled by the Secretariat of State were used in 2014 to finance a luxury property developed in London's Chelsea district. So just so you get an idea of how much money these people are playing with. $200 million were used in 2014 to finance a luxury property development. But it's okay, Il Papi say. Please continue to give your hard-earned monies to Peter Spence. News of the Vatican's €1 million investment in Rocket Man also follows revelations that the pro-abortion, pro-gender ideology Ford Foundation provided $2 million in grants to key groups involved in the recent Amazon Synod, including one run by the Brazilian Bishops' Conference. Cecile Richards, former president of Planned Parenthood, sits on the board of the far-left American Foundation. So it's all about the money. These people are selling out morality, they're selling out the Bible, they're selling out Christ for money. No better than politicians who do the exact same thing. At an October 19th Synod briefing, Paolo Ruffini, prefect of Vatican Communications, said that while he is not familiar with the financing process of the Ford Foundation, as a Christian and as a Catholic, I think it is good that the money goes to a good end. Wow! Don't you just love the justification? Ruffini said to this correspondent during the briefing, I would ask you, do you think it was better for the Ford Foundation to use this money for other possibly non-Christian ends? Well, how much more non-Christian can we get, Mr. Ruffini? You're financing movies depicting homosexual male sex scenes. How much worse can it possibly get? Riddle me that. News of the Vatican's €1 million investment in Rocket Man also follows revelations I'm not going to go on with this because it's just, this is what's happening. This is what happens when supposed leaders, spiritual or otherwise, are not being called to account. This is what happens when you assume that those in authority over you, be they political or spiritual, have a deeper, more profound sense of morality than you do. Peter Spence, a charity meant for the most poverty-stricken people in the world, is financing movies that have nothing to do with morality, with Christianity, with anything noble or good or decent. So there is that. Now, in case you missed it, the Democrats are full throttle, all engines going for impeachment. It's not a surprise. What will be surprising is if they have the votes in the House. I mean, the Senate is already a foregone conclusion. There's even talk that McConnell plans to acquit Trump at the trial if it gets that far. But I'm still dubious as to whether enough Democrats in the House will vote on the floor openly to go forward with this sham. Because even people who don't want to see through it are seeing through it. And they realize it's about hate. It's about despising one individual. In case you didn't know how bad it was going, or in case you were wondering, when they finally announced the 2 articles of impeachment, what was it? Obstruction of Congress, and another thing that's hilariously insane because there's no evidence to prove any of what they're saying. But every single time they tried to get like a full frame of everybody that was there, Nancy Pelosi kept stepping to the side. She didn't want to be associated with Maxine Waters, Adam Schiff, Jerry Nadler, and a couple of the other strange nuts that were up there. Because, again, I have to stress this because some of you still don't believe it. Even slow-witted as she might have become, even, oozing of booze, Nancy is still a political animal. She didn't survive in politics this long if she wasn't good at politicking. And so she knows how bad this is going to be. She knows how horrible it's going to turn out for the Democrats. This is why she is physically distancing herself from that group. Just, if you happen to find the video on YouTube, just watch it if you don't believe me. She kept taking steps to the side because she didn't want to be close to Nadler, Schiff, Maxine, and the rest. It was hilarious to watch. So I really don't believe that impeachment is going to get out of the House. I think that enough freshman congressmen are going to want to preserve their seats, wherein they're just not going to vote for it. But if it does, it's dead in the Senate anyway. And you're going to have a bloodbath on your hands come 2020 because all the people that promised we're not going to have any sort of impeachment unless it's, bipartisan. Don't you just love that word, bipartisan? The only thing bipartisan about this whole thing is that there's already 2 Democrat Congress people voting against it. So much for bipartisanship. Now, one thing that is being overlooked, one thing that is being sidelined through all this is all the little nuggets that have been coming out about the Inspector General's report regarding spying on U.S. citizens by the U.S. government. And again, there will be some of you that will shrug your shoulders and say, well, I got nothing to hide. I understand that. But that's not the point. You may not have anything to hide. But do you want elected officials to be able to surveil anyone at any time for any reason? See, this is the thing that some people don't understand. It may not affect you in the moment, but if you allow it to persist, if you allow it to metastasize, if you allow it to grow, there will come a moment when it will affect you. One by one, Republican senators expressed outrage Wednesday that the Federal Bureau of the Eye, or of investigation, if you will, had committed errors in how it sought and obtained surveillance on a former Trump campaign advisor. It wasn't error. These people maliciously went about dismantling the lives of others without a second thought, knowing that they were innocent. There was a guy who was an asset for the CIA. His name was Carter Page. Now, he worked as an asset for the CIA quite a long time until a bureaucrat, a pencil pusher, decided that, nope, we need to say he's not an asset in order to be able to surveil him because of his proximity to the Trump campaign. So here's a man who was serving his country. Here's a man who thought that the government he served had his back. And not only was he thrown to the wolves, they lied about what he did for the government he worked for. Now, I know that some, well, you know, that's what you get. Is it, though? Because if somebody who serves their government can't trust their government, then inevitably and eventually you will have a breakdown of civil society. If this isn't remedied, it's not going to get any better all by itself. It will continue to get worse. It will exacerbate. People will continue to lose faith in government because they're corrupt. It's not as though they have no reason. It's not as though, well, you know, I'm just... No, they have reason, ample reason. So, here we are, 3 odd years later, and the findings contained in the Inspector General's report show alarming privacy violations, and the reason that it's important is because these things could be wielded against any American. So you could have the most powerful force in the world, which is the U.S. government, make up literal lies about you, throw you in prison, accuse you of things that you never did, pronounce you guilty before you have any chance of mounting a defense, and no one should be the wiser. This is why it should enrage you. This is why it should anger you. The concerns echoed those made by civil liberties advocates for decades, but they came this time from self-described national security hawks who have long voted to renew and expand U.S. surveillance powers. In dressing down the FBI during Justice Department Inspector General Michael Horowitz's testimony about his report on the origins of the FBI Russia investigation, several Republicans suggested that they were open to major alterations of a post-Watergate intelligence law known as the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, or FISA. Now, if you dig into this thing, and I can't say I've read it all, I don't have that much coffee. It's boring. It's legalese. But the gist of it is, during the prior administration, they applied for a FISA warrant to spy on Donald Trump and his campaign, because that's what it is, it's spying. They were rejected, so they came up with a whole new fanciful thing and used what is now known as the PP dossier to get that FISA warrant and spy on American citizens, all the while knowing that what they got their FISA warrant based on was false, a lie. So tell me again how these are the best and the brightest. Tell me again how we should trust without verifying when this is the kind of abuse that's going on. I don't know. It concerns me. It more than concerns me to see this happening in this country. It doesn't surprise me that it's happening in other nations. It troubles, concerns, and even surprises me that it's happening here. Whether their frustrations will amount to more than political theater to defend President Trump and attack Democrats. By the way, by the way I'm reading this, you realize that it's not by an administration-friendly outlet. It's by the Wall Street Journal. Because they're still trying to float the idea that all that they're doing here is trying to defend Trump. From what? The man is innocent. He was proven right that he was being spied on. What are they trying to protect him from? Pray tell. But the rhetoric marked a sharp pivot for several lawmakers who have in the past strenuously rejected privacy arguments in favor of supporting programs that intelligence officials often warned could jeopardize national security if they were curtailed. You know what? I'm still trying to figure out what all of these intrusions into people's privacy prevented. Show me something palpable. Say, this is what this person was playing or planning, and because we intruded upon their privacy, this is what we were able to prevent. If you can't come up with that, then I don't know, maybe we should rethink just how much power a bureaucrat could have or should have over the life of a citizen who inevitably is paying that bureaucrat's salary by their taxes. In an impassioned opening statement, Senator Lindsey Graham, the Republican chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, railed against what he described as a loose system of oversight at the FBI that allowed investigators to push forward with a counterintelligence investigation into Mr. Trump's 2016 presidential campaign. He said the FBI defrauded the secretive FISA court with its applications for surveillance on the former campaign advisor Carter Page and compared the FBI's actions to abuses discovered after Watergate. It is as if J. Edgar Hoover came back to life, Senator Graham said, invoking the name of the FBI's long-tenured previous director who oversaw spying on civil rights activists, including Martin Luther King. Yep, we're back there. Even though we say we've made progress and the such, that's kind of what it smells like, isn't it? Spying on your political opponents and using government officials to do it. Using the power of the law to justify your behavior even though your behavior is illegal. Acknowledging that he proudly considered himself a pretty hawkish guy, Mr. Graham said he would hate to rein in the FISA process. Why? It should be reined in. Because evidence shows us there's been abuses, given foreign security threats to the U.S. But after your report, I have serious concerns about whether the FISA court can continue unless there's fundamental reform. Mr. Graham said, in his detailed report, Mr. Horowitz concluded the FBI was justified in opening the counterintelligence probe into possible ties between the Trump campaign and Russia, but he described repeated failures in how investigators compiled surveillance applications. The FBI said it accepted recommended changes to its handling of surveillance applications made by Mr. Horowitz. To that I say, ha-ha. They have made no changes, And they will not make any changes until they are forced to. But back to the original reason I started down these two rabbit trails today, and that is the very real truth that nothing is as it seems, apparently. That those whom you believed would do right are systematically doing wrong. Those who you thought were moral and upright individuals are financing movies that have the first openly homosexual sex act in the history of movies. This is why we need to return to the basic principle that cursed is the man who trusts in man. The only one we can trust who will not abuse our trust, who will not take advantage of our trust, is Christ. The only one we can run to when the world seems in despair and chaos, when everything around us seems like it makes no sense, is Christ. Because it will get more confusing. It will get more despondent. People will get more violent and angrier. Because these are the times that we're living in. These are the consequences of our choices as a nation. These are the consequences of our choice as the world. We have strayed from truth. We have strayed from righteousness. We have strayed from holiness. We have strayed from the Word of God. And once light no longer exists in you, then immorality will come naturally. Once light no longer exists in you, doing the wrong thing for the wrong reasons, as long as it profits you somehow, becomes quite easy. Understand that those who were telling you it's going to get better are leaving out the fact that before it gets better, it's going to get a lot worse. Because yes, eventually it will get better. Jesus will come. We will ascend into heaven. And we will be with him forevermore. But there are many valleys that we will have to cross until then. There are many things that we will have to witness until then. There are many disappointments that we will have to suffer until then. There are many heartbreaks that we will have to endure until then. And along the way, we will see people who we thought were on the side of right reveal themselves to be on the side of evil. We will see people that we thought were upstanding and moral reveal themselves to be anything but. And by the same token, we will see people we were unsure about, people that we were dubious about, prove themselves. Because as things progress, as darkness continues to attack light, more and more people will have to pick a side. They will have to choose what side they're on. And although most will pick darkness because it's easier, there are some who will pick truth. There are some who will pick light. So what do? We the few. We who have not strayed, we who have not compromised. What do? Well, first, we make certain that we know the voice of our shepherd. And not only that we know the voice of our shepherd, that we instinctually obey the voice of our shepherd whenever he speaks. The second thing we need to do is stand on truth, even if you stand alone. Because it may feel as though you're alone, but you're not. Elijah the prophet taught us that when you think yourself alone, God still has people who have not defiled themselves. God still has people who have not acquiesced to the darkness. God still has people who remain faithful to Him. So stand. Whatever the situation, whatever the circumstance, whatever the context, always make certain, always know that you are on the side of truth. And one of the easiest ways to know that we're on the side of truth is by identifying who our enemies become. See, once you can identify who your enemies are, you will know whether you're on the side of truth or you're on the side of deception. Once you can identify your enemies and those attacking you and those coming after you, you will know whether you're on the side of right or you're on the side of wrong. Because, as I said recently in an article, devils don't cast out devils. Evil men don't promote goodness. Darkness does not promote light. Evil does not protect righteousness. So keep that in mind. The easiest way to know which side you're on is to know who your allies are and who your enemies are. And if those people calling themselves your allies aren't what you would consider upright and upstanding, then maybe you are on the wrong side. I don't know who that was for, but I needed to say it to you. Because after all the bloviating and after all the self-righteousness and after all the sanctimony, eventually we all have to pick a side. Eventually we all have to say, here I stand. This far, no further, devil. And that's when all of our inflated egos get deflated, and that's when all our sanctimony gets stripped away. Because that's when the fighting starts. That's when you are about to engage in spiritual warfare. When you've picked a side, you've staked your claim, and you've said, this is a hill that I'm willing to die on, whatever that hill might be. Dark days are upon us, and I know that we get glimmers of light and we get glimmers of sun. And it's good. Enjoy the sun. When the weather turns out here in Wisconsin, every time I get a sunny day, I'll just go and stand outside and just enjoy the warmth of the sun on my face. But while doing that, I live under no illusion that it will continue to be this way, because I know the season. I know the time. I know that it's winter in Wisconsin, and so if the sun shines and peeks from behind the cloud for 30 seconds or 30 minutes or 3 hours, I know it's going to get cold again. Enjoy the sun. But remember that the snow is coming too. Because a lot of people live and are living as though winter will never come, the snow will never fall, things will never freeze. And they get caught unaware. Today is not sunny in Wisconsin. But I know that at some point, given enough time, the sun will shine again. Until it does, I have to make sure that my kids stay warm, that my windshield's not frozen, that I've shut off all the water so that pipes don't freeze, because I understand the season that I'm living in. And every day I pray that you do the same, that you understand the season that you're living in. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for being with us. May God bless you. May God keep you. May wisdom abide in you. And until next time, this has been the Light of Truth radio broadcast. Gino, it's all yours.
Yes, I just want to say thank you again to people not only listening to the broadcast, but we've mentioned a few times at the end of the broadcast this battle we've had in our county next door with these adult clubs, strip clubs, wicked places. And through people praying, 2 men have now been indicted in charges of illegal prostitution. And by the federal government, grand jury indicted these 2 guys. One was the owner of 2 clubs, and this is really a good thing to show in our state, Wisconsin, that we're not going to accept sex trafficking and prostitution, especially at these clubs of perversion and debauchery. And so out of the 3 clubs that were open, only 2 are shut down. 1 is still operating, but now I believe after this indictment, that final one will definitely, I believe, get shut down or sold in some form of fire sale. But I just want to encourage y'all, keep praying. God is a God that gives us victory against the wicked and against the enemy, and exposes darkness. And this is all God's doing as the church in the area, and Christians especially, rose up against this these clubs that were trafficking gals. We've been seeing victory after victory, and victory is good. Hopefully this will go across our state, and all these clubs will eventually shut down in Wisconsin. Thank you so much for listening to the Light of Truth broadcast. God bless you. Have a great day.
Thank you for listening to today's broadcast, The Light of Truth with Michael Boldea. If you would like to order a copy of today's broadcast, please visit our website at handofhelp.com. If you have questions about our ministry, you can email us at handofhelpoffice@aol.com or simply call us at 920-206-9910. God bless you.